Regular council meeting of the village of Armada will now come to order. Will everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Roll call, please.
Shaw.
Here.
Clark.
Here.
Cronin.
Here.
Wolof.
Yes.
Baylor.
Here.
Slutz.
Here.
Delkey.
Here.
Next is the approval of the agenda. What's the council's wishes, please?
I need to add the SRF notice of intent.
Under new business?
Yep.
We have a upcoming due date, otherwise I would hold off on it.
Very good. Anything else? Any further discussion on that?
Mr. President, I move the agenda be accepted as amended.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion now? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. At this time, the floor is opened up for the citizen comments. State your name for the record, if you will. And you have 3 minutes to talk. Anyone who would like to address the council at this time? Very well. We have no presentations tonight. Next is the administrative reports. Any liaison reports from council?
Yes, I gotta have my obligatory reports, Mr. President. Sesquicentennial, as of this Friday, we're at D-minus 30 days. Preparations are going very well. We've got meetings virtually every Wednesday. It's all details now. The main activities have been pretty well planned out and nailed down. We're doing very well with donations. And we had intended to have a schedule of events in the packet just for you to take a peek at. I fubbed that, so I'll make sure I put one in your box, but it's changing every week, just in terms of more detail, not necessarily taking anything off. There's more going into it. So that's the Sesquicentennial. Any questions, please? Okay. Water, I expect delivery of both of the reports that we've got in process. One is the water reliability study, which I've been going back and forth with Row on. It's all positive stuff, but I've asked him to put more things in the report related to lead service lines and some other issues that we want to get in there so that it's captured. And we've also got the arsenic containment study that's going on. Again, both of those should be provided to us in October. Subject to questions?
Very well. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. President.
Yes.
For the police, I'd like to put a thank you out to Taylor Marie Photography here in town. Took over the fair and took an opportunity to get photo updated of the police department and put together a new framework for it, and they donated the services.
Very well.
So very nice.
Very good. Good work. Thank you.
Taylor Marie.
Okay, next is the approval of the agenda for the regular council meeting minutes of August 26th and the payment of bills. What is the council's wishes, please?
Mr. President, I'll move the consent agenda to be accepted as presented.
Support.
Has been moved and supported. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
The motion carried. Next is the old business. Sewer plant update. Mr. Clark, is your department, please?
Yes, we approved the purchase of an oven back a couple meetings ago. And that's when Scott was there, and things didn't happen in an orderly manner, and it kind of, the ball got dropped. So Chris is back there, and he's checked into what was going to be ordered, and he found out that he could purchase one a little bit cheaper. So I would like to go ahead and do that, if we could do that now, and I cannot find the paperwork for it. Oh, here it is.
Before you do, you're not doing them, before you do a motion, Jeff, do we need to do a motion? I mean, the motion was
Is it the same
specific.
vendor or?
That's the problem, right?
Yeah, it's a different,
Different vendor,
do we
different
need to
price.
rescind the motion
Yeah, I
of
think we probably should
before?
rescind the prior, just so there's something in the minutes, Steve, so somebody asks, why did you ever get this one, why are we buying two of
Okay.
them? So just a motion to rescind the purchase of oven, or you can,
Yeah, Becky had given me those. So much paperwork here tonight. Give me 1 minute here.
Yeah, I know. He's got it.
Okay. This was dated on 7/8/2019. Purchase from Thermo Fisher Scientific for price not to exceed $2,688.92. That was the previous one. Now I would like to
Wait,
we have to make a motion.
You gotta make a motion to
Okay.
rescind.
make a motion to rescind
The purchase.
the purchase.
Of the
Of
drive.
the date and time?
Yeah, of the
Money or whatever?
meeting 7/8/19.
Can I see that motion?
Yes, you can.
So I think it's gonna be to rescind the motion of 7/8/19 to approve the proposal from Thermo Fisher Scientific in the not to exceed amount of $2,688.92 for a Hartburn Advanced Protocol Oven for the sewer plant. So you're gonna, that's your rescind.
Rescind, yes.
Okay,
I
so,
support that.
Steve, can I ask you a quick question? That PO never got placed with that company, did it?
No.
Okay.
I've got a PO on this,
okay. Okay, so you
and
need,
I'll give you that as part of the motion.
they need to vote on
We
it.
got to vote.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Any further discussion on it? If not,
You need a roll
You
call?
need to vote. or
No.
No, not to rescind.
because we're not spending any.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. All in favor, please.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried.
Okay, so you
Next
want to use
then,
this motion?
Steve.
Could I have that back when you're done?
Yes.
Okay.
And a resolve to approve the proposal from North Central Laboratories in the not to exceed amount of $2,350 for a Herman 2.15 gravity convention oven.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Clark,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Belkey,
Yes.
Sleds,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Conan,
Yes.
Bullock.
Yes, motion carried.
Can I have both those pieces
Yes,
of
you
paper?
can. There you go. Thank you, everyone. Sorry for the confusion.
It's cheaper.
Yeah, cheaper, but
Plus.
All right, does that conclude yours?
yes, yes.
Mark? Thank you. West Main Street update. Mr. Ballard, your department, please.
Yes, thank you. Well, we have a walkthrough dated for tomorrow morning, or tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. We have some things down there that have to be corrected, and I have 3 here on the list. It's the snow emergency sign on Fulton. It says Fulton Street, it has to say Fulton in Maine on the entering the town. They've got some cracks in the cement, and we've got a private road sign down there on the west end that has to be straightened up. And the purpose of the walkthrough is to make sure that we agree with everything that has to be done. There's also some filters on the new catch basins that have to be taken off and stuff like that, so.
And along with that, I believe they're supposed to factor those out too.
Oh,
So,
that's right, supposed to
Yeah.
back them out, so. And I'm going to state right now, we're gonna withhold some money until all that's done. We're not gonna pay them the full thing, and or whatever. So, okay, that's the purpose
Any
of what.
indication at all on that amount, Mr. Ballard?
No, I'm not sure, but I'll keep enough back so they'll hurry up and do it. Okay, that's it.
All right,
Are we paying that or is M?
And that pays them.
MDOT pays that, but I'm allowed to complain with MDOT.
Okay, all right.
Excuse me, Lyle, did you notice that they put us in the annual letter that goes out from the drain commissioner about the money they give us for the drain, the culvert?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, I got an email from, what's her name?
Candace Miller.
Yeah, from Candace Miller that showed their magazine, and we were featured in the magazine as a community that they gave money to.
that was in the Now magazine, right?
Well, I got it on, yeah, I guess it is. I got it online.
Okay, fine.
In the near future, Mr. President, I would like to set a ribbon cutting ceremony down there. It will probably be in the next 2 weeks. We'll have Candace Miller and some dignitaries out here to help us, the ones that helped us with the payment, of course. And we're gonna cut
Well,
this
that'd be
in.
fine, because her department, from Macomb County was the only one that contributed to us.
Right.
And so, if, more the merrier if we could.
Okay, we're good. Okay, thank you.
Very good. So that will be tomorrow afternoon, yourself, myself, and Mr. Clark, and then the engineers and the,
And the contractor.
all right, so, thank you, Mr. Ballard. So we'll go to new business now. It's going to be fitting proper for the auditors to step forward and do their annual.
Quick report. You're doing awesome. Everything's gorgeous.
Watch your eyes, I'm about to
You
blind
want-
everybody.
Yeah, Lyle, it's right in the magazine, it's pretty nice.
Good evening, everyone. I see familiar faces, but I do want to take a couple minutes to introduce us. My name is Curtis McBride. I'm a CPA for McBride Manley & Company. We are the firm that audits the village's books and records. And I am the audit director for our firm. I'm also the managing partner. I've been with our firm for 19 years. With me this evening is Brooke Troy. She was a critical team member of our audit this year, so I wanted to bring her along with me. I handed out a physical copy of my presentation, if you'd like to follow along that way. The only thing I do ask, obviously it's fine that it's available on a public meeting, but please don't pass this out to the general public. This is only summarized information from our full audit report, and it does not contain our audit opinion, so please just use this for your own purposes. Thank you. Before we get into the slides, I want to talk a little bit about the actual financial statement, which is this bound document that you should all have sitting in front of you. Now, there are 3 types of audit opinions you can receive from your auditor. There's what we call a clean or unmodified audit opinion, which means that we believe your financial statements are in compliance with our accounting standards and they're reliable. And then there's what we call a modified opinion, which means that for the most part, we think they're reliable, but there may be a few exceptions to that. And then the third type of opinion is what we call an adverse audit opinion, which means that we don't think that they are reliable. So I am pleased to announce that for the year ended March 31, 2019, the village received a clean or unmodified audit opinion from our firm. So that's the highest opinion you can receive from your auditor. I do want to clarify, we're just providing an opinion on the reliability of your financial records. Our opinion does not cover the financial health of the village. That's not the primary focus of our audit. Now moving on to a brief discussion about your funds. The first one I want to talk about is the general fund. Now the general fund primarily derives its revenues from property taxes, from distributions from the state of Michigan for state revenue sharing and from special assessment revenues, your PA 33. Looking at the balance sheet for the general fund at the end of the year, you can see you had about $857,000 of assets on hand. You had about $126,000 of liabilities against those assets to finish the year with an ending fund balance of about $726,000. Now I'm going to talk about fund balance in a little bit more detail in my next slide. This is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. In other words, the income statement for the general fund for the year. You can see the general fund generated about $885,000 of total revenues during the year. You can see, looking at the sources of revenues, you generated about $368,000 from property taxes, another $179,000 from state revenue sharing, and then about $125,000 from your PA 33 revenue. You can see you spent about $704,000 during the year, so you actually had a positive or an increase to your fund balance during the year in your general fund of about $181,000 to finish with an ending fund balance of about $726,000. Now, to put that into perspective, the state of Michigan Department of Treasury recommends that at a minimum, your fund balance level be 10% of your annual expenditures. I'm a little bit more conservative. I think a municipality the size of Armada, in my opinion, your minimum would be more like 20%, because if you think about it, your total expenditures are only $704,000. That would leave you with $70,000 of fund balance. That really does not leave you with a lot of cushion there to prepare for anything in the future, whether it's any emergency projects or a downturn in the economy. It really doesn't leave you with a whole lot. So in my opinion, the minimum would be 20%. You are actually more than 100%, but in my opinion, you are not excessive. And I'll get into that a little bit more in a subsequent slide. The bottom line is you want to be able to prepare for a downturn in the economy. You want to be able to prepare for any major emergency projects that you may have coming up, whether it's streets, or anything related to water and sewer, because you want the general fund to be able to subsidize some of those other projects. That's very important. The next three funds I want to talk about a little bit are the street funds. So you have the major local municipal street funds. Now, the major local street funds generate their revenues from the state of Michigan Department of Transportation. They distribute monies to the major local streets, and then the municipal street fund derives its revenues from property taxes. So you actually have a tax millage for streets that goes to the municipal street fund, and the municipal street fund then helps subsidize the major local streets. These are what we call special revenue funds, and we call them special revenue because their resources are restricted for a special purpose. It's for the maintenance and construction of the streets. In other words, the major local and municipal street fund cannot be, these funds cannot be used for general operating expenses of the village. It has to be completely set aside for streets. Looking at the balance sheet with the local street fund, you can see it finished the year with total assets of about $108,000. Didn't have a whole lot in liabilities, about $1,700, to finish the year with an ending fund balance of about $106,000. Looking at the major street fund, the middle column, you had about $230,000 of assets on hand. You had about $46,000 of liabilities against those assets to finish the year with an ending fund balance of about $184,000. Looking at the municipal street fund, you can see you finished the year with total assets of about $370,000. You had total liabilities against those assets of about $8,500 to finish the year with an ending fund balance of $361,000. I'm going to talk about fund balance levels for these three funds in this slide. This is the income statement for the street funds. You can see, starting with the local street fund, it generated about $44,000 during the year. It spent about $58,000 during the year, and it had $45,000 transferred in from the municipal street fund. That's actually what the municipal street fund is there for, is to help subsidize these two funds. So that is something you are actually allowed to do. So you can see the local street fund had an increase to its fund balance of about $31,000 during the year and finished with $106,000 in ending fund balance. And that is actually more than 100% of annual expenditures in that fund. So in my opinion, the local street fund also has a healthy fund balance level. Now, the thing you need to keep in mind with these three funds is that their fund balance levels are going to fluctuate drastically from year to year, depending on what kind of projects you have going on in the streets. Obviously, in years when you have major construction projects going on, you're going to utilize a significant portion of that fund balance. In years when you don't have projects going on, you're going to build that fund balance back up. So the major street fund generated about $309,000 of revenues during the year. It spent about $228,000 during the year, and finished the year with an ending fund balance of about $184,000, or about 81% of annual expenditure. So again, major street fund also has a healthy, solid fund balance level. The one thing I want to draw your attention to in the major street fund, you can see you actually did spend about $165,000, what we call capital outlay. That was actually the West Main Street project. You didn't use your fund balance level because, as you can see in revenues, that was actually money came in from the Michigan Department of Transportation to help you fund that project. So you didn't utilize your fund balance level because of that project. You can see the municipal street fund generated about $150,000 of revenues. It had total expenditures of about $42,000, and then, as I mentioned before, it transferred $45,000 over to the local street fund during the year, and it finished the year with an ending fund balance of about $361,000, which again is more than 100% of annual expenditures. The municipal street fund is a great thing for the village to have. Not all communities have it, and you guys were kind of talking about it a little bit before. The monies you receive from the Michigan Department of Transportation for streets is not sufficient, clearly, for all the projects that you have going on. So the fact that you have the municipal street fund out there is a great tool.
Jim, you would say that that is also a healthy fund?
It is. All three of those funds, in my opinion, are healthy fund balance levels. The next fund I want to touch on just briefly, because it's a relatively new fund as far as the village is concerned. That's the Salvage Vehicle Inspection Fund. This is also a special revenue fund because the funds are restricted for expenditures that affect stolen vehicles, vehicle parts, and inspections. And the village actually has a pretty active program, salvage vehicle inspection program, so that's why it has its own fund. You can see it generated about $355,000 of revenues during the year. It spent about $356,000 during the year, and ended the year with a fund balance of about $372,000, which again is a good fund balance level. And again, I don't really have a fund balance recommendation for this fund. The bottom line is you generally want to spend it down in the salvage vehicle inspection fund. You don't want to have a big fund balance level. I'll talk a little bit about what these monies can be spent on in my final slide. It's coming up in a little bit. But I want to draw your attention, two major things were purchased with these funds during the year. You guys bought license plate readers and an Explorer. And those, you can buy major equipment with salvage vehicle inspection fees, and that's what you guys did during the year. So that's actually a good utilization of those funds. I have a few slides. I just want to look at trend analysis a little bit. Here we're looking at state revenue trends. So in the middle column, revenue sharing. So those are the revenues that are going into the general fund. And then distribution to the street funds would be the monies that are from the Michigan Department of Transportation that are going to the major and local street funds. So you can see here we're going back to 2015. You can see you generated about $164,000 in revenue sharing in 2015. It's been trending upward. And you can see you generated about $179,000 in 2019. Distributions to the streets, similarly, you can see you generated about $149,000 during 2015. It's trended upward up to about $185,000 for 2019. Just a couple things to note about the distributions to the street funds. Over the last couple of years, you guys have been receiving extra money, I guess I would call it, from the Department of Transportation because some of the horrible winters that we've had. So those really you can't count on every single year. So that kind of explains why it went from, roughly $140,000 in 2016 up to $185,000 in 2019. Here we're looking at the property tax revenue trend, again going back to 2015. This one's very interesting. You can see in 2015 you generated about $460,000 of property taxes. And again, this is your general operating millage and your, as well as your municipal street millage combined here. You can see it's come up to about $516,000 for the period ended March 31, 2019. But the interesting thing is, if we look back all the way to 2008 with this trend, you actually generated $612,000 of property tax revenues in 2008. So even though it's trending upward, and now it's at $516,000, you still have $97,000 less in property tax revenues to work with in 2019 than you did back in 2008. And we all know the cost of operating the village certainly has not gone down in that same time period. At a minimum, it's going up by the cost of living. I don't want to get too technical about this, but the primary reason this happened is because if you remember, back in 2009 and 2010, when we had our recession, the housing market really crashed. So you had 1 or 2 years where market values dropped as much as 25 and 30% in 1 year. Well, due to some of the constitutional limitations placed on property taxes, due to Proposal A and the Headley Amendment, even though home values have recovered, you know, housing market has been booming, what Proposal A says is that taxable value can only go up by the rate of inflation every year, even if that same home, its real value went up by 30%. So even though the housing market has recovered and those values have gone up, the taxable values have not gone up at the same rate. So that's causing this to happen. So it's going to take a long time for those property tax levels to get back to where they were back in 2008.
What was that 2008 figure again?
612,000 approximately.
Is that typical of all communities?
It is. This is certainly not unique. This is something that's happened to almost every community in the state of Michigan.
So, no, but I mean, but have others recovered faster than?
I would actually say you guys are probably you guys are recovering, in my opinion, from what I've seen, a little bit quicker.
Good.
I would say.
All right.
This next slide is the general fund 5-year trend analysis. Here we're looking at the fund balance level. Again, going back to 2015. You can see in 2015 your general fund balance was about $402,000, and you can see it started to trend downward. And that was, you guys were starting to feel the effects from that loss in property tax revenues. You can see it came all the way down to $314,000 just as recently as the year ended 2 years ago, March 31, 2017. You guys have done a great job at budgeting, and you brought your fund balance level back up to $726,000. I kind of talked about this in a previous slide. You do need a solid fund balance level in your general fund. You don't know, I'm certainly not predicting it to happen, you don't know when the next recession is around the corner. You don't know when home values are going to fall again. You have to be prepared for that. And again, you guys have done a great job at pulling your fund balance back up to $726,000. I just want to briefly see the last two funds. I want to talk about the water and sewer funds. These are quite a bit different than the other funds. These are what we call proprietary funds. We call them that because they're accounted for more like a private business than a government. And that's because they're supposed to be self-sustaining. In other words, the village charges the village residents for the use of the water and sewer system. You can see the sewer fund had total assets of about $3,042,000 at the end of the year. You had liabilities against those assets of about $39,000 during the year and had a total net position of just over $3 million. But you can see you have two categories here for net position in both of these funds. So you have this net position category called invested in fixed assets of 2.6 in the sewer fund. Those are the net assets that are tied up in the actual plant itself. So in other words, you can't write a check and pay bills with a plant and the major equipment in the plant. So the portion of the net position you want to focus on is the unrestricted. So in the sewer fund, you're at $359,000. That's equivalent to the general fund balance, if you will. And that's at about 67% of your operating expenses in that fund, which again, is, in my opinion, is solid. Your water fund, you can see you had about $4,138,000 in total assets. Total liabilities of about $1,123,000. The majority of that is in a bond. You have a dwarf bond outstanding, and that matures in October 2024. And then your total net position again, and this one is also just over $3 million, but just focusing on the unrestricted portion, it's at about $677,000, which is actually at about 100% of annual operating expenses. So in summary, the general fund has a healthy fund balance, the major local municipal street funds have a healthy fund balance, and the water and sewer funds also have healthy fund balance levels. My last two slides, just want to talk briefly about the salvage vehicle inspection program. As a lot of you probably know, the maximum fee for the inspections is $100, which the village does charge, and that actually gets shared with the inspector, so that the money comes into the village. The inspector or the officer who does the inspection then gets what I would call, I guess, a commission for doing the inspection. The fees collected can be used for law enforcement purposes that affect stolen vehicles, vehicle parts, and inspections. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, you guys utilized some of the funds for some equipment during 2019, which is a really good use of the funds. Now, I put recommendations up here because this is relatively new. You do need a new separate fund, which you guys do. You guys started that in April of 2016. That's because the level of money that you're generating from the program, they have to be accounted for in a separate fund and restricted. Method of payments, the state of Michigan discourages inspectors from handling cash. They're never allowed to handle cash. And I am pleased to announce that the inspectors here do not. So you guys have a really good control over that program. Then I just want to talk a little bit about the law change, which is relatively new, actually from 2018. So Michigan PA 108 of 2018 provides greater flexibility in how you spend revenues generated. And actually, from what I understand, I believe it was your representative who pushed this through. So that's pretty impressive.
Yep.
One key thing that's new is police officer wages are now an allowable use of the revenues, and it never was before. So as a result, you guys were generating a lot of revenues and you weren't able to spend a lot of the funds, but now you can, since police officer wages are allowable. Equipment and patrol services that increase the likelihood of recovering stolen vehicles are also an allowable use of the revenues. Records must be made available for the village to audit the funds, which you guys do. So basically what that means is when we come in to do the audit of the village, the records for the salvage vehicle inspection program also must be available to us, so we can do an audit on it just like we're auditing the other records in the village. You also records must also be available to the state upon request. That's all I have. I just want to talk about the audit in general. As far as obtaining all the information, that went really well. Your staff was very helpful to us. Didn't run into any problems. And we have a great relationship with everyone on staff here, with Joe, Michelle, Becky. It's common for them to be in contact with us throughout the year. And that's the kind of relationship we prefer because that heads off any problems. I'd rather have a relationship where someone's going to call us and say, hey, we have this transaction coming up, or we're getting into the West Main Street project or sewer project or whatever it may be. And then we're able to provide advice on that early on before things. No one likes a surprise, so we don't want to come in after the year is over without ever having any contact with the village, and that your staff does a good job at communicating with us. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Steve, with this possible new request you encountered today, would there be something to say that from Mr. McBride that we could get some coverage out of our balances here?
Well, we've got the SRF project, and we were figuring on spending $3.2 million. As of today, we need to bump it up another $300,000.
Okay. So roughly $3.5 million.
$3.5 million. So that's why we're having this added to the agenda this evening. We have a due date that is coming up quite close. And again, just finding out about having to do all this tonight, so.
Sure. Well, I will say, I mean, obviously, you don't have the funds available at this point, so there'll have to be some sort of revenue source, whether it's a bond or something like that.
Yes, it is not.
Yeah, so that's the important thing, is if you have a source of revenue like a bond, then you're not going to be using up the fund balance level.
Right.
It's going to be funded from an outside party.
Very good. Any other questions, council?
Thank you, Curtis.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Curtis, you have an excellent presentation, and I always welcome you and your company, and having Brooke come with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Mr. President, at this time,
Yeah, there is a motion there.
I'll resolve to accept the audit for fiscal year ending March 31, 2019, and to place it on file.
Support.
Then moved and supported. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Next is the crack ceiling for the village's local streets.
It's not local streets, I'm sorry, I didn't change that. It was changed on, it's just for streets in general.
Oh, all right, good, that's fine. So that'll be the major then also. So Lyle, your department, did you wish to comment?
Well, this is something that we should do every year, but we let it go last year, and now we've got to do it this year. So it's for 11,700 linear feet, and we put it out for 3 bids, and we got 1 back, and it's the same guy that did it before. So I'm going to resolve to accept the bid from Total Asphalt in a not-to-exceed amount of $10,530 for 11,700 feet of crack ceiling for the village streets.
Support.
By Clark. Moved and supported. Any further discussion? If not, roll call please.
Taylor?
Yes.
Clark?
Yes.
Wolock?
Smoke.
Sleds? I always call you Lance, I screwed you up.
Right.
Pelkey?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Conan?
Yes.
Motion carried. So when do you think they're going to be starting on that, Lyle?
Well, I called them today, and they said if they get the signed contract in the mail, they'll put us on the schedule and they'll get it done.
Who signs the contract then?
No, me.
Well, no, I have to be counsel.
I don't have a, is this what they're looking for,
They're
signed
looking for
back?
right there.
Should the motion then say to allow the streamers to, or is it okay just because the streets?
You and Mark sign it.
Okay,
And they also stated out here that they want a deposit, but I told them, I said, we don't give deposits, we pay when it's done.
Yeah.
She said that'll be fine. Well, that's good.
That's good, that's fine. All right, fine. So Michelle and I will sign that.
Okay, real good.
Okay, next is the a bid for the Memorial Park pump house, which is Mr. Shaw's department, please.
Mr. President and Council, you'll see I did send out the bids, and we received none other than the original one that was listed, and it's in your packet. So if there's any need for discussion as far as cost, my question to Ross might be, do you think it'd be any more than that, than what you bid? Just wanted to put that in there.
Barry did indicate he would like to get inside and do exact measurements of the window enclosures. I don't think it's going to significantly go up, but you may want to take it up slightly from where it is now, given that I don't think he's gotten access yet.
4,000.
Yeah, it's 4,000. Okay, so I'm gonna say 4,000 instead of 30 or 50.
Not to exceed 4,000?
Not to exceed 4,000.
do you need a motion?
Yeah. I'd like to make a motion to resolve to accept the bid from ABGN Construction in the not to exceed amount of $4,000 for window and door replacement in the pump house located in Memorial Park.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion?
It's great.
If not, roll call please.
Shaw,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Conan,
Yes.
Pelkey,
Yes.
Swets,
Yes.
Wallach.
Yes. Motion carried.
I'll just tell them, get it done by the sesquicentennial.
I'm glad you guys are looking into getting it repaired and not just letting it deteriorate, because it is a historical building.
It is
that
historical, right.
May not have any real use at this point. Someday we'll probably find something that will.
It's such a unique structure.
Exactly, it's uniquely ours.
You pay $4,000 just to tear it down and haul it out of there, so you might.
Yes, you would.
That'd be more than that, right. Okay, the next is SRF, Mr. Clark here, department please. And Yes, earlier today, received some information that we need to bump up the price that we were at $3,200,000 we were bound for. There's been some additional costs, and it's gonna move it up to $3.5 million. I have Mike Faith from Rowe here, and have him explain the increase and what is, what's caused the increase anyway. So, Mike?
Thank you all.
Yes, Steve, please.
Yeah, just first, when we originally started this project, I think it was close to a year ago, we did a preliminary cost estimate that was based on fairly general look at what was going to be required at the plant. Once we got into the design, got the detailed design complete. Am I in the way of the camera?
Yeah, just
Sorry.
over at that corner. Thank you.
Or just block the camera.
You did, completely.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Okay. Since then, you know, we've talked to various manufacturers whose equipment we looked at, got firm prices from them based on the actual scope of the work and so on. Right now, as of today, I would say my cost estimate is $3,350,000 roughly. I think we're looking to go to 3.5 in case things come in high. The construction market in the state in the last year or so has been kind of all over the place. If this was a road project, I'd probably tell you to go for even more than that, because road prices have been coming in very high on rebuilds, and asphalt prices are kind of ridiculous right now. So I will say there's not a lot of fluff in here. You know, I've been working with Steve, with the operators, with Eagle, now not DEQ, on what's required. I don't think there's nothing in here that is not needed to get the plant up to where it should be, and to give you a solid operating plan for the future. I have done a couple things. There is some demolition we had included in the project. Basically, the old plant that was built in the 50s, there's an old building there that will no longer be used, and the old couple tanks below grade. We're going to put those in as a deduct alternate in the bid, so if it comes in a little high, we can take that work out.
That would save close to
It's about
maybe
$100,000 is what I have estimated for that part of the work.
And part of this too is what the plant is permitted for. It has changed since over time from what it was. And to get it to where it should be, again, they're adding some new filters at the end of the process before we discharge into the creek.
Okay.
So there's something new there that has never been.
Your discharge limits here for the effluent going out of the plant, the state regulates, it's called BOD, is the term, biochemical oxygen demand. It's basically carbon suspended solids, which are just particles, and then ammonia. You have very, very tight discharge limits compared to a lot of places in the state. And it mostly has to do with the size and the flow in the stream versus the flow coming out of the plant. So you're discharging in a fairly slow stream, so they look at how much it concentrates in there. And Steve and I were discussing this. We don't have the data from when the current facility was built back in the 80s, what it was designed for. My guess is it was probably designed for around 15 milligrams per liter, say, of BOD. Now your limit is 4.
Wow.
So it's significantly tighter limits. And again, the 15 is a guess, but just, kind of looking at the size of the tanks and everything. So a lot of the stuff in the plant has needed to be upgraded. The other thing we are doing is you're permitted for, it's 0.45 mg. I hate pulling numbers out of my head. We are designing the plant based on your permitted flow for the discharge right now. Your actual flow is significantly less than that, but we don't want to design for what your flow is at, because if, you know, somebody comes in the future and wants to build a subdivision, you have the ability to add connections in the future, so.
Because there is a potential for that.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, you've got
Always.
significant capacity for to take additional flow if you'd like. You know, which would give you the ability to annex property in or something if you wanted to do that.
And this isn't stuff that Roe is making up. This is from the DEQ saying this is what you are supposed to be. And again, early talks with the DEQ, they wanted to spend $1 million. And then a month later, it was $2 million. And within a couple of weeks of that, it was $3 million. And, you know, here we are, a bedroom community, and it's you, me, and the neighbors paying for all this. It's very hard. But this is where we're at this evening, and because I just wanted somebody here from Roe to explain a few things.
Yeah, and I would, you know, personally, I'm sorry if this is, I know it's more money than you wanted to spend looking at, you know, but we're trying to do our due diligence. I don't want to sit here and tell you, yeah, it's going to be under 3 million, then have your bids come in at 3, and you miss the opportunity to get the grant because there is a very tight fixed schedule for that, right? Which is kind of what's driving this right now. You know, I'm hoping this may come in low. You know, I try and be fairly conservative when I put numbers together on construction here. You know, we want to be reasonable. We don't like to be the low bidder when this thing goes out, and obviously we don't want to be the lowest. We don't want to be way high and have it come in at $1 million after you've already decided to spend 3 on it. And that's probably not going to happen, but, you know, we want to make sure you're covered, I guess.
And there are a lot of moving parts at that plant. There's a lot of things that happen. You can't just take one little segment out, we're not going to do that. Well, it affects everything, so. Anybody else have any questions?
The other concern I have, and I kind of worked this into the budget, is it is a renovation of an existing plant. Anytime you start taking old stuff out and putting new stuff in, we didn't have as-built drawings of the plant. We based ours off the design. They're close, we field checked them here and there. But I have never worked on a project that involved renovation where you got in there and didn't find or found something that wasn't the way it was shown or wasn't where it was supposed to be or whatever. That's just the nature of the business, so.
Jeff, do you have any questions or?
No, I just, the only question I have is, not question, but, you know, this may affect rate setting because the amount's going up. So I just want to make sure that for future, like we always put, you know, upcoming agenda items, we will have to adjust that moving forward. So we got to make sure that we don't forget about that, Steve, because I could see we could get over this initial hurdle, get ready for November when they're going to sell the bonds, but we have that obligation to show them that we've made the commitment. So just want to make sure we don't lose track of that.
And I did ask how much of a cushion, and right now it's set up at 5%. I was hoping it was up a little bit higher and we had a little more cushion, but Mike said at this point of design and everything, they kick it back to 5. So, and again, we talked about the demo thing. I mean, there's 100,000, but if the DEQ gets real picky about it and they want it done, it'll need to be done. But hopefully, it sat there for 30 years. It could sit another 30 years. I mean, it's another 100,000, but it's something.
Well, it's deteriorating fast.
Oh yeah,
When I was down there.
May just go down by itself.
Yeah, because like I say, even the windows, doors, you know, just rattling to pieces, you know. I don't think it's safe to begin with.
No, it isn't. The guys don't want to go in that building, and they don't go in by themselves if they go in at all.
And our intent is with this project, everything in the old building, if the funding is available, will be demolished. If not, it will be abandoned, and no one will need to enter that building for a regular operational basis. You could board it up and leave it if you had to.
You mean that back building?
Yes, yeah.
The old
Back by the cell tower back there, yeah.
It's just an eyesore as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it
size.
is.
So, but I think in essence, it's the right track to move on.
If I could just add one other thing, I did have some email from Karen, and I can't remember her last name.
Nichols.
Nichols, thank you, at the state. I think we have all the requirements in for the funding side. She mentioned she has talked to the permitting side, and they're supposed to be issuing the construction permit either Friday or Monday, is what their intent is.
Okay.
So Right now, it looks like we are on track to advertise the thing and to advertise the construction in 2 weeks and move along. So,
And so then work would be probably approximately then what?
I think we, do you have
Would it be, I don't know
schedule?
that I had that.
I gave it to you.
I think maybe I
did.
gave it. It might be in that. In here.
Oh, you guys did all that stuff.
Maybe.
Yeah, I see it. It's
Yes, I see it.
right there. Yeah. They're saying, opening of bids, DEQ order of approval would be 11/15/2019. And this does say DEQ, but, so after that, we would be able to award the contracts, get the contractor going to start work. My guess is they probably wouldn't come in until after the first of the year by the time. A lot of the equipment, there is a very long turnaround time. They have to submit shop drawings, we would review and approve them, then order the equipment. So, I mean, the major parts of the equipment, it's 3-4 months between when you award the contract and before it's ready to ship.
Yeah, it's stuff that's not normally sitting on a shelf.
There is some work that could be done over the winter, but my guess is that they would probably, at where we are now, most of the construction would begin early this spring, probably once
We're
frost
bidding
loss.
out for a general contractor to conduct
Yes,
the
it would
renovation.
be a general contractor, they would hire electrical, mechanical,
Order all the
subs, order all the stuff, be one general contractor. And there are a lot of good contractors in the state who do that kind of work on a regular basis.
Okay, with all that being said.
So your motion's gonna be to adapt the, then just read all of this on the top of them. And then to direct the clerk to publish the notice in the record. So,
Okay.
to adapt the notice of intent resolution, so we're done, so just read that. Just read all
Okay.
three.
I'll move to approve the notice of intent resolution sewer system revenue bond series 2019 state revolving fund project,
And to direct the clerk
and to direct the clerk
to publish the notice in the record.
to publish the notice
in the record.
in the record.
So just, is approve okay, or does
I
it
think we
say
should
that?
adopt, yeah.
All right, so say to adapt the notice of intent, then approve.
Notice to adopt.
Okay.
Support.
You all set? Right, okay. It's been moved and supported. There's no money amount involved in this, right?
They like to know who, I'd rather do it.
Yeah,
I don't think you
yeah,
have
just
to
do
do
a
a
roll
roll,
Roll
but,
call?
yeah.
Okay. All right.
Ready? Clark?
No further discussion then?
Clark, yes.
I jumped.
Okay.
Ballard?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Sleds?
Yes.
Belkey?
Yes.
Conan?
Yes.
Volak?
Yes. Motion carried.
Thank you, everyone. This is not how I like to do things last minute, but that's what we're up against.
Yeah, me help.
Well, when you're under pressure, you know, there's a lot of things sometimes we just have to back up and go forward.
Speaking of last minute, before we go on to upcoming agenda, Mr. President, just something slipped by us. We've got and we don't have to sign it now, we don't have to do anything with it right at the moment, but I just want to get process and protocol down. And this is a contract from one of the two bands for the sesquicentennial. All of the money for these activities is donated money. We've got a specific entity that wanted to pay for this. So the money is being held by the village. It's come into the village, it's being held by the village. Jeff, how do we go forward on something like this to sign off on this contract?
It's well within the spending discretion. You don't need counsel. I'm assuming I got 2 copies, so is it 1,200 or 600?
Yeah.
Because I got 2
600.
copies. 600, all right. So
Well,
that-
and I think we just didn't know, Ross can sign that, or does that have to be signed by Marvin? or-
That's your normal protocols, like purchase orders and things like that. I don't know normally how you guys authorize, but it's well within Ross's approval to,
Yeah.
Okay.
we're well under the limits.
Okay.
Well, it's within his,
Right.
Then I'll just, my intent
Have
then would be to sign off
go
on
sign
it
out,
and
yes.
get it back. I don't think we're paying
the
until they
originals.
actually come out and do it, but I'll get this back to them so we lock them in.
Just give me a copy after you sign.
And we
it,
have the
please.
donations already in
Yes.
place, okay, perfect.
And then I'll tell the entity that donated the money that, yes, in fact, it did go to that, nobody had.
Yeah,
Are you gonna need extra?
he can make a copy of that once he signs it,
I'll
and
sign it.
then I'll get a copy.
Is that what he had?
Sign these two. There you go. Alright,
All goes through Joe, right? Money all goes through you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
She's got it all.
All right, up and coming agenda items, any the council has, please?
Put on their new rate figures for SNRF, I guess, or,
Yeah, that may not be ready for the
Well,
very next meeting, but I agree, Steve, let's
Yeah.
not lose track of it, because I did see in the email chain
Okay.
that we will need to show proof of, on
okay.
so.
I'd like to keep the West Main Street on until we're completed with that.
you're always in old business.
I know it.
It's not coming to this next meeting, it's not coming until November now, but, I had, asked for, Stephanie Burgess to come from the county to discuss the senior minor home repair program and all the programs that are available through the county for, seniors to get, money, grants, money that gets paid back, upon the sale of your home, like a reverse mortgage type thing. And I had her coming tonight, and she called me today, and just because I knew the SRF happened, and Curtis would be here, she can't now come till November, but I just wanted, I'd like to get her into the library, I'd like to get her into the senior center, I'd like to get her here, because the more people know about those opportunities, the more they will use them.
Well, here's a perfect offer. I mean, if you're gonna talk to her again soon, we're offering up table space in the street fair for the sesquicentennial to
Yeah,
community service organizations, nonprofits, and so on. We'd love to have her out there. She can put up a table.
okay.
We'll just send her a application so we know she's a nonprofit. She's gonna come.
Yeah, I'll give her a call.
Actually, I'll talk to her until I can put her on a focus program too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the more people know that these programs are out there, the more they'll get utilized and the more they'll stay in the county. I hate to see them.
Well, and we've got seniors out there that can use it.
Yes, we do. We have seniors that have used
That
it.
have
So
used
I
it,
just,
taken
but I
advantage
just
of it.
want more people to understand how the process works. But it's a good opportunity for people that need home repairs.
Very good. Anything else? Next is citizen comments. Floor is open up, state your name, 3 minutes for the record, please. Hearing none, seeing none. Council comments. Mr. Gunner.
Well, I was looking through some old papers I had at home, and I stumbled on this, and I kind of thought it was interesting. When I first came on the council, I was appointed.
Boy, those are old papers.
Yes. But this, I think, was in the advisor or something, but in January of 1989, I was appointed to the council.
Wow,
And,
1989.
it seems like it was yesterday.
Just out of high school.
Give them a couple of extra duties, and that'll make it.
Remember Ray, what's
Yeah.
Ray's last name?
Yeah.
He used to live in the subdivision, then he moved over to Ellington.
Oh, yeah, Brown.
Yeah, Ray Brown made the motion.
Wow.
I think maybe my neighbor Greg seconded it. Greg Holler. But anyhow, it's
What's your
30 years, that's gone pretty fast.
Just over to
Right?
Yeah. It was even prior to Jeff.
No, I need you.
Were you there then?
What? I knew Greg.
I knew Anderson, though, our old lawyer.
We're both old.
Yeah.
McBride was here as well when Curtis and Dad was here. 30-some
Yeah.
years.
Yeah,
So that's-
we used to meet in the library, the most.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Going over there.
We met at the library, we met, we used to meet over there by, we had the village's office where the barber shop is. By the, what was then the IGA.
Yeah.
When we were building this, we were meeting in the library. We had a very famous evening there one night. One of our citizens was upset with his neighbor, who happened to be on the council, had something to do with trimming some shrubs. He brought a handful of shrubs in and threw them at the trustee.
Let's not encourage that behavior.
Congratulations, Dave, that's a long
Yeah.
career.
Oh, my goodness.
It's been a lot of fun.
Mr. Cohen, thanks for being an old veteran serving on our council.
So,
And you've been a longtime resident of the village also.
Yeah.
Not
The
quite
only
as
one
much.
here that's a lot longer than me, Marv, is you-know-who.
Well, it must have been Mark Womack. Yeah, all my life, another 3 months. Be 80 years.
Wow.
So, well, so much for that, Mr. Cohen, thank you. Is there any community events also besides the subsequent venue?
No, just assess what's in town.
That's it, okay.
Just as we
Well,
like to
I
say.
guess we're gonna have a homecoming football game though, I believe. Isn't that end of September?
And it's, I think the 28th. Is that it?
I don't know if it's in October, but it could be.
Maybe it's
It's the end of the
October?
month.
2 weeks, yeah, probably 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I know it's either September or October, I can't remember.
No, it's
for sure.
September. It is
Moved to
September.
It changes every year,
Yeah.
so.
It's changed.
Yeah, okay, so,
Yep.
well, we'll support our,
Our Tigers.
our Tigers and our football team here in Armada. So I want everybody to remember it.
Well, that brings another interesting point. Anybody that'd like to show that support, you can buy a sign and put it in the front yard that we love our Tigers.
Oh, nice.
Where's that available that day?
I don't know, I got mine from Mary Starrett
27th
Yeah. That was close.
and Mike's wife.
in Lee City.
Okay, very good, thank you. There's no closed sessions tonight, so I'll entertain a motion for adjournment, please.
Time is 8:05 PM. I move to adjourn.
Support.
Moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
I didn't ask for any discussion though, because I know it's gonna
There's no discussion.
Good, Mike.
Unless Dave had something.
Thanks.